Shalom. Welcome to the Language of the Prophets series. Today we are talking about Parashat Vayishlach, the third Aliyah, or the third reading. Let's get started. The third reading is, of course, from Sefer Bereshit, the book of Genesis, chapter 32, verse 31 through 33, verse 5. That's 32:31 through the next chapter, verse 5. Verse Lamed Aleph, that's Lamed 30 plus 1. Vaikra Yaakov Shem Hamakom Peniel. So Yikra means he will call, or he will summon. And Vayikra, of course we have our Vav conversive, means and he called. Who's the subject? Yaakov. And so Yaakov called Shem Hamakom. Here we have a nice construct chain. Shem Hamakom. So it's Ha Makom. So this means the absolute word. The last word in the chain is definite. So this means we have to make the whole chain definite. So he called the name of the place. Right? Even though it doesn't say Hashem Hamakom, you can't really say that. Remember, any words that are not the last word in the construct chain cannot have a definite article attached to them. Instead, it's expressed already by the last word being indefinite. So oftentimes people ask me, well, Yamiya, what if I want to say the name of a place, right? Something like this. That's expressed differently in Hebrew. Then you could say Hashem, and then you would say Le Makom, right? Like the name to a place, literally, is how that's expressed in Hebrew. But you cannot say indefinite, a name of the place using the construct grammatical setup. Peniel. So this is an interesting word. Peni, this is formed from kind of a garbled change from panim. So panim, of course, means face. It only exists in the plural in Tanachit, in biblical Hebrew. So face or faces, right? You just have to interpret that way. And then probably this is the leftover vestigial, I would guess, genitive ending, the yod compaginus, maybe not. So face of El, face of God, right? Or face of a divine being. Remember, Elohim and El, they can mean divine beings. They don't necessarily have to mean God. And now, here's his reasoning. Ki ra'iti Elohim panim el panim vatinatzel nafshi. Because, and this is from the verb ra'ah, it's a lamed hey verb. So there's your hey, he's a tav here instead. So the root is reish, aleph, hey. Ra'ah, you should know this word, to see. So because I have seen Elohim, panim, face, el, towards panim, face, or face to face, as it usually comes across in English. Vatinatzel nafshi. And here we have, this is a nifal word here. It's in the nifal binyan, which oftentimes is interpreted as passive. So we have the main root here. The root is natsal, nun, sadi, lamed. Natsal is to snatch up, like you're looking down and you snatch something up. And oftentimes interpreted rescued. And then the stem, the binyan, is prefixed with a nun usually, right? So in ancient Hebrew, it would have been vatin natzel, right? And it still is, but we write it with the strong dagash instead, okay? So technically, if you were to blow these out, this is two nuns here. The first nun, sorry if that looks a bit like a cough. Again, I'm writing with my fingers on the trackpad of a laptop. Okay, so you would have had a schwa under the first nun, with teen, and then you'd have the comets under the second nun. That's what this nun means. Whenever you have a letter with a strong dagesh, then and it has a vowel under it or associated with it, then you can assume that the first one has a schwa, right? A silent schwa, because chirik is a short vowel. So vatin natzel, nafshi. So passive and was rescued. We have a vav conversive here. Tinatzel means will be rescued or will be snatched up. So time swap, and was rescued. It's feminine because nefesh is feminine. And then this is a segelet. Nefesh, remember we discussed segelets recently. Like melech is our kind of go-to example, because almost everybody knows this word, because it's in so many brachot. Melech. So segelet is a noun, typically that has segols, although you have some like na'ar that are two patachs. I won't get into that. So two segols in a row. These are the segols. And so they exhibit similar patterns. When you put a suffix on, for example, if I want to say my king, then this becomes malki. Malki. Patach, shwa, chirek, malki. And you'll notice the same pattern over here with nefesh, which is also segolet, when we put on the pronominal suffix yod at the end, just like melech, king, malki, my king, nefesh, soul or life force. In some contexts it can mean throat, these sorts of things, becomes nafshi, my life. So probably my life would be better than saying my soul. My life was rescued. Something about Elohim, I just want to reinforce that you should not interpret this as always as God or gods, right? Yaakov Avinu is not saying that he wrestled with God here, right? He's not saying that I saw God's face. If you say that, then that actually negates other parts of Scripture where we're told that no man has seen God's face. Instead, you have to understand the nuance of Elohim in Hebrew. As I've mentioned before, it's residents of the spiritual realm are Elohim, right? That's why the God of Israel has a special title as El Elyon. So there's many Els, there's many divine beings. We're not calling them gods. That's an English translational, I would call it unfortunate. We don't really have, well, the tradition of translating into English has overplayed the God hand, right? So the one true God, he has a special title, El Elyon. He's the El who's most high. He's over all the other Els because he made them. Okay? He's the one that is, in Yiddish we call the Eysaw, right? The one who is without end and without beginning. Verse Lamed Beit 32. Oh, and actually, I did want to comment. I was reading a commentary by the wonderful Rabbi Aiden Steinsaltz of the Steinsaltz Talmud, and Rabbi Steinsaltz, he comments on this battle that happened between the two, between the supposed angel of Eysaw and Yaakov Avinu, and he points out that it's an interesting psychological story as well. That it's almost as if Yaakov is battling with himself, right? He's having to overcome that dark part of himself before he can go on to make proper teshuvah to his brother, right? He doesn't call it teshuvah. This is me injecting my own thoughts, mixing it in with what Steinsaltz says. And so yeah, I find that fascinating. Oftentimes we have this in the Bible, and you should not. If someone sees a beautiful psychological thing or a metaphor that's in Scripture, you should not have this attitude that, no, that doesn't match my literal interpretation. Really, I think what is a better approach is to say, can't both things be true? And Steinsaltz is not suggesting that it didn't really happen. He's an Orthodox rabbi. Of course he believes it really happened. So it really happened, and maybe Hashem was using it for this purpose to help Yaakov Avinu grow. Just like oftentimes we have tzarot, we have trouble in our lives, problems, and we don't understand why it's happening, but only many years in the future, with that proper foresight, when we look back, we understand that it might have actually been the hand of providence. It might have been Hashemayim interfering on our behalf to force us to grow so we would be ready for a much more dangerous problem. If Yaakov had not encountered this angel and had the humbling experience of his hip and all these sorts of things, then who knows how he would have actually, what would have happened emotionally inside of him when he dealt with his brother later. Okay, continuing on, because we don't have time for full Josh. 32. ויזרח לו השמש כאשר עבר את פנואל Okay, I didn't see because of my pink colors here. There's the etnachta, atnach, however you like to call it, the end of clause marker. So let's stop there for our translation. So zarach is to shine, to illuminate, right? Like the zerecha is a poetic word in Tehillim for the sunrise, right? Usually we say shachrit, right, for the dawn, or shachar, and zerecha is a poetic way to say that, and it can also just mean sunlight, right? So Yizrach is imperfect, usually rendered he is shining or he will shine. But again, we have our vav conversive, so it means and he shone low, and shone low on him. And here's the subject, Hashemesh. So probably then the sun shone on him, according to how, or according to when, Avar, he crossed over at Penuel, to Penuel. And you'll notice something here. Look, we have a different spelling, Peniel, and then in the very next verse, Penuel. What is going on? Is this a different place? Is Peniel the same thing? I don't understand. Okay. And, okay, I had some notes I forgot to put up. I'll come back to those in a second. And Rabbi Kimchi comments in the Nichot Gedolot that oftentimes in Hebrew we see an I and an U changes that can happen in names, right? So you'll see this type of change happening. So maybe maybe when Moshe Rabbeinu wrote it, there's some reason. Again, this might be something, if you're one of those people that likes to really dig to see what is the nuance, what's happening here, there might be a reason. Look, they're just one verse away from each other to have these different spellings. You might find something here that's worth illuminating on. And if you do, please share with me. I'd love to hear what your findings are. Or you can share with everybody and comment in the comments down below. Now I want to comment back on this face-to-face. I have a quote here I'm sharing with you from the Jewish Publication Society's book on Genesis by Sarna. And regarding this, I've seen face-to-face, there are two idioms that are combined here, both inherently ambiguous. To see the face may describe an experience of either cordiality or hostility. Face-to-face, used only of divine human encounters, may be an adversary confrontation or an experience of extraordinary intimacy. And we've commented before, or I've commented when I've discussed the Bechat HaKohanim, right? We want God's face to shine towards us, right? We want him to turn, usually it's translated, turn his countenance towards us, which is panai, which is turn his face towards us, right? And this is in the only bracha that we're aware of that, the only prayer that God himself authored, right? So we have this authored prayer, and some of you might be screaming, wait, what about, the Mashiach's prayer? Okay. That notwithstanding, that is a Hillelite prayer that Rabbi Hillel wrote, and Yeshua HaMashiach is endorsing that prayer by using it. So he did not actually write the Avinu Shebashamayim. It's a subset of a Hillelite prayer, right? So coming back to this, Panim also in Tehillim, for those of you who follow my Tehillim Time series, Panim can mean fury. Right? So face or faces can mean fury. So you have in the Tehillim, you have Panei Elokim or Panei Hashem can actually mean the fury of God in some instances, right? So this aptly demonstrates what Sarna is talking about here, about face to face. It can be for good or it can be for bad, but it is not neutral or lukewarm, all right? The deliberate ambiguity here simultaneously portrays the perilous and the auspicious nature of the furious struggle, right? So this part here up top, the note that I didn't put up, just Ki Raiti Elohim, that's I have seen divine beings, or a divine being is probably what, he could be plural, right? Because he had dreams as well of the angels descending and ascending previously, right? Okay, continuing, Lamed Gimel. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't do the second half of the verse of 32. So, or then, I'm going to translate this as then he limped, he walked with a limp, al Yericho, on his thigh. Okay. Lamed Gimel, 33, al Kain lo yochelu v'nei Yisrael et gid hanashr asher al kaf hayarech ad hayom hazeh. Okay, so here it's explaining the kashrut rule here for the Bnei Yisrael. So, al kain means therefore, yochalu is they are able to. So lo lo yachalu, right? So as I've expressed before, don't think of this as modern Hebrew as being future, but it's imperfect, it's incomplete. So just, it can be a present continuous, we would say in English, something like this. So therefore, the Bnei Yisrael do not eat, or are not eating, do not eat the gid hanashe. What in the heck is the gid hanashe? So the gid is the tendon. And hanashe, those of you who are familiar with my Bible note systems, when I have it hollow like this, like an outline all around each letter, this means it's a hapax legomemnon in the Bible, which means it only occurs one time. So this is kind of a curious word, and it means the sciatic nerve, according to halot. This is nashe, is the word. So the tendon of the sciatic nerve. Asher al kaf hayarech, which is at the cusp. Kaf is cusp, right? Like the letter kaf, even if you look at the shape of it, it even traces the cusp of the hand, right? In the case of the cusp of the thigh, or the cusp of the hip there, that's going to be the socket, right? That's where it fits in. So the socket of the thigh, ad hayom, until hayom hazeh, this day. Kihi naga'a bechaf yerech Yaakov begid hanashe, because he touched against, right? Bait, it does mean at or in, but I think here it's kind of implying also the militaristic, right? To touch against, to strike against, right? To move against. So he touched against the socket of the yerech. So why is it yerech here and it's yarech over here? Give you guys a couple seconds to look at that while I change colors. The color should tell you. Here we have a construct chain. Big one. 3 words in the chain. Okay? So Yaakov is definite, right? So it makes our whole chain definite. So we're going to have these in there. Right? It's not any person. It's not an ish. It's Yaakov, right? Definite. So against the socket of the thigh of Yaakov, right? And so we have here this, or again, thigh, hip, like that area. It's so this is in the construct state. That's why Yarech is which is in the absolute, changes spelling to Yerech. The long vowel kametz actually shortens. And Sari also, both of these, look at this, they both shorten. They're both long vowels and they shorten to be segol, short vowels. Because in ancient times you would have read this as a compound word. Chafyer Yaakov. Chafyer Yaakov. You see? Chafyer Yaakov. It would have been one word, although we don't read it. We read more like Israeli pronunciation when we read from a scroll today. Begid Hanashe. At the, or against the tendon of the sciatic nerve. Chapter Lamed Gimel, and I left that superscripted, it should have been, but whatever. So this is the chapter heading. It's usually bigger like this. If you have a Koran Bible or one of those other that are nicely typeset. Vayisah Yaakov Einaiv Vayar'u, pardon me, Vayar Vehine Eysaw Baha Ve'imoho Arba me'ot ish. So hard to squeeze several tones out of one syllable words. So the first one up there, you should recognize Eysaw by now. We've had it enough. This is a peinun verb, nasa, to carry. Yisa, it would have been yinsa in ancient times. There's our dagesh, showing the noon is inside of the scene. So then Yaakov lifted up, or carried, lifted up a knife, his eyes. Lifted up sounds better in English. His einayim. Vayach, so this is a lamed hey verb. It's ra'ah, the hey fell away. Right? So there's the root reish, aleph, hey. And he saw, and he looked, v'hinei, and behold, Eysaw, ba, was coming. The imo, and with, pronominal suffix, with him. Arba me'ot ish, yikes. 4 me'ot, hundreds, ish, of men. Vayachatz et hayladim, Aliyah, ve'al Rachel, ve'al shtei hashefachot. Okay, so this is from the word chatsa with a hey. It's a lamed hey verb, so chet, tzadi, hey. And if you pray the Siddur, you should recognize like the Chatzi Kaddish, the half Kaddish, it's a shorter one, right? So this means to divide, right, or to split. So Yachatz would mean he is dividing, or he divides, or he will divide. And when we have the Vav conversive, we're usually dealing with the future meaning of that. So we swap it to past. So he divided Hayiladim, this is the children, Al Leah, with Leah, Ve'al Rachel, and with Rachel, Ve'al Shtei Hashifachot, and with the two slave wives. Verse Beit. Vayasim et Hashifachot, Ve'et Yadehem Rishonah. So this is sim is the verb. There's a yod that is the second root letter that likes to go away. So sin, yod, mem is our verb, and sim means to set or to place, right? So yasim would mean he will set, vayasim means and he set, past tense. And he set the shefachot, these are the servant wives, ve'et yaldehen, and so yaldei, this is a construct form. Actually, I should have used blue, I guess, but it's not a chain. A construct form, and you should know the pronominal suffix hen at the end, meaning theirs. If you're talking about all women, right? Because he's married. He's talking about the women, the servant wives that he's married to. So their yaladim is what it is. So their children, rishonah, first. Vet Leah viladeha, and Leah and her. Here's our suffix. Laha at the end, and her children, achronim, next or after, from achel, right? After. Vet Rachel, and finally, and Rachel, vet Yosef, achronim, and Yosef, achronim, right? Later. And we don't have Benjamin mentioned because he's not born yet. He's born later when Rachel dies. And it's interesting, you might notice the order in which the children are coming. It seems to be the reverse order of how strongly he loved the wives, right? So first are the servant women, who he had absolutely no choice in. And then second was Leah, who was at least related to his first choice, but we know that she's the Senua, right? The one who's loved less. And then finally, Rachel, the one who he chose and loved the most and happily worked 14 years for. Gimel. Vahu avar lifnehem. Then, I think is better here than and. Then he Avar crossed over. Okay, so actually we're going to say he himself. Because Avar already is third person masculine singular, right? If you just look at Avar and you tell me literally what does it mean, I say it means he crossed over, right? Okay. What does who mean? Who means he. Okay, so whenever you add extra pronouns that are not necessary, they usually are there to either kind of be a stand-in for doing oppositional statements or a predicate sentence, something like is or are. Or there's extra emphasis, and we don't need is or are because we already have avar, he crossed over. So he himself is how I would translate this. Then he himself crossed over, lifnei him, before them. Okay. Vaishtachu artzaha sheva pa'amim, ad gishto ad achiv. Okay, so yishtachu, this is to prostrate down. So yishtachu means they prostrate down, they usually prostrate down, they will prostrate down. The Vav makes it the opposite. So then they prostrated down. Artza, helacative, direction towards the eretz, towards the ground, right? We don't mean they prostrated down facing the land of Israel. Sheva pe'amim, 7 times. Ad gishto, until gishto, so this is nagash. It's a peinun verb. That's why there's the dagesh in the gimel there. Right? Although you can't really tell. Actually, no, we wouldn't start it with the dagesh there. But that's actually probably because bagad kifat, sorry. But nagash is to meet or to reach, right? So until reaching him, meaning Eysaw. Until achiv, his brother. And I just want to read you this quick, interesting note from this book I have called the Rosh Hashanah Parallels, the text from Ugarit and the Hebrew Bible. volume 2, page 422. So Von Rad has noted the sevenfold bowing of Jacob before Esau in connection with the formula in the Tel El Amarna letters. I think that should be one L in Tel. Here, as in the Akkadian and Ugaritic letters, the sevenfold bow, right, we see here Sheva Pe'amin, indicates respect and humility. So other cultures are doing this also in the ancient Near East, including at Ugarit and in the Akkadian language, which was the lingua franca actually in the days of Abraham and Sarah in those areas. Jacob acknowledges his inferiority to the one before whom he bows. That part is, of course. And then finally, finishing off the third Aliyah, chapter 33, verse Dalet 4. Vayaratz Eysaw lichrato v'chabkehu vayipol al tzavarav vayishkakehu vayivku. Okay, so this is from the word rutz. Right? It's a hollow verb. We would have had a schwa in there. Rutz is to run. So yaratz is he will run. Vayaratz, he ran. So then Eysaw, or it could be and Eysaw ran, likrato. So don't confuse this with to summon. It's a homograph. So likra is also, it can be to summon, or the homograph can mean to meet, right? And so to meet, him, meaning Yaakov. V'chabkehu, and he hugged who? He hugged him. Vayipol, this is a peinun verb. The noon is inside the pay there. Nafal is to fall. Vayipol, and he fell upon Savarav, upon his neck. Really sweet. Vayishakehu. Okay, this is peinun from Nashak. There's a noon that's inside of our sheen there. So Nashak is to kiss. Here's our little dog showing you that there's a noon here. These two sheens mean there's a noon. And the sheen dot kind of gets obfuscated with these ponctuaires extraordinaires, as they're called in the Biblia Hebräica Stuttgartensia. In the Masorah, we have these actual special dots, right? If you look in a Torah scroll or in one of the codices. And, I'll just leave it for a sec. So, and he kissed who? Him. Vayivku. So this is Lamed He, Bacha. So the root is Beit, Kaf, He. And as I mentioned before, it's onomatopoetic, Bacha, Bacha, Bacha. So it means to cry, to weep. So, and they wept. Yivku means they will weep. Vayivku means and they wept. And they wept, okay? So, it's kind of mysterious why these dots are here. There's various theories. There's a Midrash. Actually, if you want to look, go to Midrash Rabbah. And Midrash Rabbah has various opinions. The sages seem to disagree on what's happening here. So, and there's even stories. Most of you probably know this listening, but there's a story that the dots are saying he didn't kiss him, but he bit him, is what it means, right? And then the story goes on to say, but Jacob's neck turned hard as diamond, and then Esau broke his teeth, and when he broke his teeth, he had to change a heart. There's some kind of silly midrashic things happening there, which. Sorry if you believe that particular midrash. I think it's kind of, I don't know. We'll just leave it there. I won't say my full opinion. And he wept. So the weeping, this indicates, I think, true feeling, right? And Ibn Ezra, he challenges the midrash. He doesn't mention it by name, but he says regarding the midrash, he basically thinks it's baloney, and he points out that we see the same behavior when Yosef HaTzadik is re-meets his own brother Binyamin, right? And he's crying, and so we see the biblical example in the culture and in this family of the normal behavior. And so there's another opinion that Eysaw actually did mean him harm, but when he saw his brother, he suddenly was moved with compassion. And there's another explanation that actually the gifts are what swayed his heart. The extreme act of degrading himself, of humility that Yaakov did. It's really something else, yeah. And we'll see in the next Aliyah that even the wording that is used, it's interesting. Yaakov sends little hints to Eysaw when he's talking about the mincha. This minchati, my gift which I brought for you. He calls it in another verse bracha, right? And so it's interesting. Bracha, it can have this nuance of meaning gift. We see this in certain places where a bracha actually is a gift, right? And as I mentioned before, according to the scholar Levine, in his writings on the Bechat HaKahanim, when we say this, the blessings, they are physical blessings. We're talking about like progeny and material blessings as well, right? It's not just I feel peace in my spirit. That's not what a bracha is. Yeah, that's a different kind of English word blessing than a bracha. Bracha, the result of the bracha is actually tangible. And so it's neat to see that Yaakov uses that kind of double entendre there. It's like he's signaling to Eysaw, this gift, this bracha, because of the bracha that I took from you, right? So it's like indicating that this is his teshuvah to his brother. Whether the brother deserved it or not is neither here nor there, right? It's surely caused the rift between them. Verse Hey. Vayisa et einav vayahav et hanashim et haladim vayomer mi'ele lach. So again, nasa. So then he lifted up his eyes and he ra'ah, and he saw the nashim, the women, the wives, and ve'et hayaladim, and the children. Vayomer, and he said, me, who, ele, are these? Who are these? Lach, to you, right? Vayomar, haladim asher chanan Elohim et avdecha. And he's still being very respectful. So Yaakov says, and then he said, the children whom God chanan, dealt graciously. We can say, chaneni, have pity on me, right? This can be to deal gracious or to have pity, right? Have pity on me, right, when we're asking for forgiveness. So, dealt graciously with avdecha, your eved, right? Again, seglet, avdecha, malkecha, right? Svarecha, right? Your servant. Okay, that concludes the third Aliyah. Keep it up.